activity in gathering such talented writers tonight. And I also just want to say, again, congratulations to Nabin. I'm going to talk very briefly about this remarkable book, and then hopefully Nabin will read a few of his poems for us. I'm not going to say very much about myself, except to say that my name is Dr. Todd Swift, and I, for many years, taught at universities in the UK and elsewhere, and have been and was at the time when we published this remarkable book. I was the director of the Black Spring Press. Now, to give you an idea of the significance of us discovering this extraordinary author, Black Spring Press, and this is before I was basically born, I was quite young, but it was founded in 1984. Okay, I was alive, but I was very young. But it was founded in 1984 in London, and it started out publishing wonderful poets, including many of Leonard Cohen's works here in the UK. And when I started my involvement with the press in 2012, and up until very recently, we've published over 200 books of poetry from all over the world in translation and also in English. So, to give you an idea, Nabin's poetry arrives at a press that values poetry and recognizes significant talent. I want to just very briefly tell you why I think this is an extraordinary book and how it fits in so well to this idea of crossing boundaries and borders and establishing dialogue that this symposium aims to generate. Because I've never actually, in all my time editing poetry collections, and as I say, I've worked on about 200 of them in the last 14 years, I've never come across a poet so balanced between two worlds, someone with his feet in two places, his head and his heart in two places simultaneously. It's an extraordinary achievement, because if you think about it, and I'm sure that there are similarities and these are drawn out and explored, but there are differences as well. Scotland and Nepal are different places, and Nabin K. Chettri has made his home in the UK and in Scotland, and he has studied here, and he has made the understanding of English poetry central to his vocation. But at the same time, his poetry is infused with the history, the culture, and the food, and the smells, and the scents, and the geography, and the weather of Nepal. So it's a wonderful, wonderful achievement to create a book that often simultaneously, in even one poem, moves between these two places. It is a crossing of cultures and boundaries all the time. And I want to read one very... Yes, I understand. Yes. I want to read one very quick poem to establish what I mean about that, and then we'll hear a little bit about from Nabin himself about his work. I should just say, by the way, that I'm stepping in at the last moment to speak on his behalf. I am his publisher, but the person who was going to introduce him, also a scholar of poetry, Marty Lambach, who was his core tutor at Oxford, she was unable to attend because of an illness, so we hope she recovers shortly. So I do hope that you will bear with me as I do complete my comments. I was told I'd have 5 minutes to do so. So I'm just going to read this brief poem and then hand over to the poet. So this is a poem that you will see manages to capture a kind of extraordinary doubling of place, the night bus. So he's sitting at his home in Scotland. As I sit in my study, stuck with a half-written poem, Johnny the carpenter is humming a song. It's unclear except for the U that stands out above the crooning. It reminds me of a song I once heard on a night bus to Kakarbita, an April night, a half moon hewn clear in a cloudless sky, almost like a lantern. The gangway was stuffed with sacks of rice and people with sleepy eyes. I had a window view. The tinted glass pane opened wide, and as the bus moved forward into the night, I rested my head on the back of the seat, felt the wind lift the roots of my hair, listened to the song, and watched the moon follow our bus all night. And you'll see in that poem the way that he moves, the poet moves from Scotland to Nepal, and that lucid, clear evocation of place is very remarkable. And the poetry throughout this wonderful book is so clear, so evocative, and so beautiful. Please, I hope that you will now give a round of applause to congratulate Nabin Chettri.
Thank you very much. I just want to be mindful of the timing, like how much do I have, so that I can stick to that.
5 minutes.
Okay. So, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for this soulful presence. To stand in a room full of people who come together for poetry feels deeply touching. I want to thank Dr. Sangita Swechcha and publisher Todd Swift of the Black Spring Press for coming over here and speaking on behalf of me. And I'm especially grateful because I've had a chance to meet a lot of my old friends and students over here, even some after 20 or 30 years, so it's been a pleasure over here. So I'll just read a couple of poems, if it's possible. So, this is Going Home. When all the work and wait is done, I long to go to my country. In October, the mud on the paddy fields dries up. The earth sends a fragrance I knew as a child. The village roads wait for people from Kuwait, the UK, Australia, the US. The hibiscus and marigold scatter along the sideways. The smell of clothes freshly stitched hangs in the air as children pass by. The nights fill up with tinsel lights. Buses go with people on the hoods and goats. The stench of diesel in the marketplace reminds me I can't belong elsewhere. The little happiness that arrives when I enter the creaking wooden door. This is called The Snow. This was published in Apple Valley Review and Ink, Sweat and Tears. Both, one is a Canadian, one is a UK journal. The Snow. The snow is terrible this year. The road towards the library takes longer than usual. I keep the books home waiting for the roads to clear up. Buses drag by with chains on their wheels, leaving long monotonous marks. Smell of raw pines and chimney smoke brings your memory back in the thin December air. The train thrills past every day, slicing the air between the hill and my house. Your memory touches like wind and halts at that moment when you left, like one of those winter evenings. The snow has been terrible this year, the days longer without you. Next year I'll wait when they clear the snow. I'll watch from the hilltop when your train comes slowly waltzing and whistling from the bends of summer. This was a commissioned poem in Stanza Festival, Scotland. In the dark, sitting by the window in Berlin, the yellow laburnum trees brightly lit on the pavement, I think of home. It is night in Nepal, and in my house on the backyard, my mother has planted cucumber, pumpkin, chilies, and maize. They grow in the dark. The cauliflower rises to the sky in a dull embrace. The beans curl up the bamboo lattice a millimeter at a time. By the time my neighbor's cock crows in the morning, the colors from the fields will have silently entered the roses. The papaya sweetens. So many things grows in the night, in the absence. One last more again?
1 minute.
Okay. So, I'm fond of wild camping, so this is, so, moon. It's winter here in Scotland, pitch black out in the woods. Inside my tent, the silence deepens. Only the chirping of the birds reminds me that I'm camping. And when I remember you, I also remember the moon. So let me put up a moon for you, just above this woods. The river Isla now lit up with its phosphorescence. And if you observe, a rugged way passes along the sandbank, where a pair of swans live. Last year they had cygnets trailing the watercourse. The mother with her long neck came so near, you almost touched. Thank you very much, Suresh ji. Thank you, friends, my students, who are coming tonight.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Nabin Chettri, and congratulations one more time. Now his book is also up for grabs for all of you. Okay, now it's time for us to move on with one literary voice presentation, and the presentation is going to be done by Uday Shankar Jujay, and I would like to give you a brief introduction to him. Uday Shankar Jujay, popularly known as Shan, is a writer whose work encompasses poetry, essays, and translation. His literary journey began in 1996 with the publication of his first piece in the newspaper. In addition to his writing, Shan is an active member of the Poetry Society. He is actively engaged in literary editing and serves as the editor and publisher of POL, an international literary magazine. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Jujay for the presentation. Thank you. And remember, you'll be allotted only 12 minutes. Come on.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for inviting me here. Thank you, Sangita. I would like to talk about prose poem. I know that already the people here, the poets here, they talked about their poetry. I'm not reading my poems. I'm just talking about the behind the prose poem. I read an article where the light breaks the freedom of the prose poem. That's the title of the article. We are living in a poetic age now. Basically, what we read at the moment in books, in newspapers, on webs, on social media, and in text messages is all written in prose. But particular among them is a novel, which is the most popular and typically written in it. However, today a considerable number of people still prefer poems in typical poetic forms to express their feelings and emotions, especially with regard to greeting cards or romantic stuff. On the other hand, there is another form, the prose poem in poetry, a bit away from typical forms, which was introduced to us long ago. Though not having as much attractive or popularity as the typical poetic forms, it also plays an important role in providing poets with more various different ways to express their thoughts and makes them even more comfortable. It's compared to typical forms in poetry. As regards the prose poem, there are no strict fixed rules relating to the length of the lines, rhythms, and system of rhymes and repetition. Whereas it should have a story behind a sentence, a song behind a tale, a melody behind a word, etc. In particular, there should be a poetic flavor which should take priority over a poetic form. Even though prose poetry has existed for almost 200 years, it isn't still hard to define clearly. Many readers do not trust it and think it is just prose, pretending to be a poetry. Written by people who cannot use rhyme or rhythm properly. People once said similar things about free verse poetry too. Thus, I already explained, like free verse and then prose poem. But the history of literature shows that poetry has never stayed fixed in one form or structures. When poet Charles Simic received the Pulitzer Prize for Poetry in 1990, the many conservative readers were surprised. How could a form they refused to acknowledge as poetry receive one of literature's highest honors? Russell Edson's observation seems fitting here. A cast iron airplane that can actually fly mainly because its pilot does not seem to care whether it does or not. Simic once remarked that he never sat down intending to write prose poems, rather poems comes to him naturally. Poetry perhaps should be exactly that, something that compels that poet to write. He revised tirelessly, crossing out words and rearranging lines repeatedly until they found their proper place. Years later, fragments left in his notebooks could themselves become entirely new poems. Now, like Jivananda Das, so he was born in 1999 in Bangladesh. So I'm talking about him a little bit. The like Jivananda Das in Bengali literature, Simic understood the power of words. Das waited months for the right expressions, transforming neglected words into powerful images and emotional landscapes. The poetry is not simply language. It is the shaping of experience through exactness and imagination. Prose poetry is renowned form of writing. It does not mainly focus on telling a story step by step in time order. Instead, it focuses on creating a strong feeling of the present moment. Jonathan Fuller, when talking about the traditional lyric poetry, called this is the present time of discourse. This kind of writing often has a ritual-like and exaggerated emotional quality. We should also remember that in prose poetry, the style of prose is used differently from normal novels or non-fiction writing. In good prose poetry, prose is not just used to tell information or clear story. Instead, it's used to create emotion, imagery, and poetic effect. If we go back to the innovation of French romantic prose poets such as Baudelaire, and have been transformed French and international poetry, so their innovative idea of prose poetry remained a form of poetry despite its construction in sentences and paragraphs. The tendency for this form of poetry is challenged or strengthen our assumption about the poetic penetrates further than perhaps any of us had previously imagined. In prose poems, we often find the voice of an author mixed with the voices of characters or other, sometimes extextual or historical voices or contemporary reference in a way that create a sense of an unsettled whole or whole composed of disparate, disjunctive, and sometimes the fragment parts. In a sentence, what is the prose poetry we must say? Verse-free poetic expressions where there is no line break. If we go back to history of prose poetry, we found so many poets try to write prose poetry in many aspects, such as American poet Amy Lowell's Bath, the Russell Erson's Metals, and David Ingstow's Information, and Henriette Mullen's Kilsberg Said. Sorting. I'm just reading the Amy Lowell, 1915 to 1917. In the meantime, so he wrote the Bath poem. The day is fresh, washed and fair. There is a smell of tulips and narcissus in the air. The sunshine pours in the bathroom window and pours through the water in the bathtub in lattice and plains of greenish white. It clips the water into flows like a jewel and cracks into bright light. So 1915 or 1917, that time, so he wrote the prose poem, the straight line. That was very wonderful. And the Russell Emerson also wrote the Metal 1960 to 1968 in between, the prose poem. So over the last few months, I have had a very rich and meaningful reading experience with the prose poetry of Amy Lowell, Russell Emerson, Edgar Allan Poe, T.S. Eliot, and Andrew Motion, and Gene Spackland. You know the Andrew Motion and Gene Spackland in this country. So prose poem exact in a flexible space between poetry and prose. They give writers the freedom to use old sentences without worrying about line breaks. All the same time, they still use the poetic tools like images, sounds, symbols, and unusual sentence patterns that we often find in poetry. If we go further to the West, we included more poets who started first English prose poetry, such as Irishman Oscar Wilde, American fellow Walter Whitman, Allan Poe, and so on. By the mid-20th century, prose poetry enjoyed a revival in the USA, where poets like William S. Burroughs, Allen Ginsberg, Jack Kerouac, Charles Simic, Robert Bly, Harriet Mullen, Russell Emerson, as someone wrote some sort of or long prose-based poetry. One interesting explanation about the prose poem I found, in the first issue of the Prose Poem and International Journal, editor Peter Johnson, he said, the prose poem, just as black humor straddles the fine line between comedy and tragedy. So the prose poem plants one foot in prose, the other in poetry. So both heels resting periculously on banana peels. In conclusion, I'm going to finish it. In conclusion, the prose and poem are two commonly used forms of literature with different meanings and writing styles. The actual difference between the prose and the poetry is that the former is written in complex and in paragraphs. On the contrary, A poem is written in stanzas with aesthetic style. Furthermore, prose consists of no rhymes or rhythm, unlike the poem, which has unique pattern. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Mr. Uday Shankar Dujay, for your wonderful presentation. And he just really, gave us a lot of ideas about the poetry, basically the prose poem. And I think all of us got to learn something new here. Anyway, now without any further delay, it's time for us to listen to an inspirational talk by Shrestha, and before I invite her, I would like to give you a short introduction. Shrestha is a Palestinian poet, author, performer, and founder of Peace is the Storm, an internationally published writer. Her work centers on resilience, identity, and reclaiming voice through storytelling. Her poetry was selected for the milestone 100th edition of Nexus International alongside her growing body of literary and performance work. So, ladies and gentlemen, now please welcome Ms. Shrestha to deliver an inspirational talk on the work No One Sees, Becoming the Person You Are Always Meant to Be. Thank you. And remember, you've got 12 minutes to deliver your presentation, all right? Here we go.
Thank you so much, everyone, and congratulations to the wonderful poets, authors. It's just so inspirational to stand and on the same stage and see that everyone is trying so hard, and the only way we find ourselves is through writing. And there's a lot of pain, thank you very much, behind it. And thank you, Sangita. You're amazing. She's always been supportive of my work, and she always believed in me, and I appreciate you. We have come quite a long way, over 2 years, so thank you very much. I want to also thank my partner and my son for being here this evening, supporting me. It's an honor to be with you this evening. I'm standing here as Shrestha, the author, the poet, the speaker, the founder of Peace is the Song. People see those titles. What they do not see is what built them. Next month marks 2 years since I escaped an abusive marriage and began rebuilding my life. 2 years. Honestly, if you had told me 2 years ago that I would be standing here today, speaking to you, sharing my book, and building a movement dedicated to giving people a voice, I would not have believed you. Sometimes we measure success by money, status, titles, or achievements. But these past 2 years have taught me that success can also look like peace. It can look like freedom. It can look like waking up and recognizing yourself again. The author was born while I was bedridden, writing page after page, searching for answers I could not find anywhere else. The poet was born from trying to make sense of pain and turning it into something meaningful. The speaker was born from years of silence, years of making myself smaller so other people can feel comfortable. And Peace is the song was born from a simple belief. Nobody deserves to feel invisible. That every person deserves to be seen. That every voice matters. Not just the established artist, not just the confident speaker, not just the confident person, but the person who has never stepped onto a stage before. The person who believes their voice does not matter. The person sitting quietly at the back of the room. Because beneath our different stories, backgrounds, faiths, cultures, and experience, we are far more alike than we realize. I grew up in Jerusalem. At 18 years old, I arrived in the United Kingdom carrying one suitcase. One suitcase. What people did not see were the things I carried inside that suitcase. Expectations, fear, silence. The belief that being a good woman meant always putting everyone else first. I arrived believing if I loved enough, sacrificed enough, and gave enough of myself away, I would eventually be enough. The problem was that while I was trying to become everything for everybody else, I was disappearing inside. I could not explain it then. I only knew there was a voice inside me refusing to disappear. A voice asking for freedom. A voice asking to be heard. But I grew up believing silence was the answer. Be polite, be grateful, do not upset anyone, do not make people uncomfortable. And when you spend enough years ignoring your own voice, eventually that silence becomes a prison. So I spent years
in prison.
Searching for answers everywhere. You know, we search for answers through each other's facial expressions. We search for assertiveness. The one place that answer lived was inside me. Inside me. I filled journals with words I was afraid to say out loud. Words I thought nobody would understand. Words I had spent years hiding. Eventually, I realized I needed help. This is when therapy began for me. I remember sitting in front of my therapist and realizing something that changed my life. For years, I have been asking the wrong questions. Why are they doing this to me? Why do they not understand me? Why will they not change? Then one day the questions changed. Why am I abandoning myself? Why do I not trust my own voice? Why do I even need permission to be who I am today? Those questions changed everything for me. Everything. Because true healing did not begin when other people change. It will never. It began when I stopped abandoning myself. The greatest transformations rarely happen on stage. They happen quietly. All authors and poets know that. It happens quietly. Those poems, those stories, they come from pain, from experience. from being away from home when nobody is watching, when nobody is clapping, when nobody even knows you are actually fighting. Because people like happy endings, don't they? They like to see the final product, but they don't know that we suffer and we struggle behind closed doors. Grief, disappointment. Every person in this room has faced a battle the others could not even see. A dream they nearly gave up on, especially writers. We often think peace is something that exists somewhere outside of us, something we will find when circumstances improve, when people change, when life becomes easier. Don't abandon yourself. For years, I believed love meant suffering, enduring pain. Now I know that love does not require you to disappear. Love is respectful. Love is peaceful. Love allows you to remain yourself. One of the hardest lessons I learned was the chains holding us back are often not physical. They are beliefs. Beliefs we inherited. Oh yeah, 2 minutes. So I have published, I'm so sweaty guys, but you know, I have published this novel, debut novel, Hope Re-Embroidered. I want to just tell you, this book is from the heart. It's gone through with me through 2 years, writing, rewriting. And it was ready, manuscript, and because, oh yeah, the book, where is it? He did give it to me, oh yeah. And something about publishers don't like raw, honest voices about, when you start speaking about domestic abuse and coercive control and culture and religion, and you're like, no, I want to speak about it. You know what? Don't polish my book. I want it visible. I want every woman's pain, everybody's abuse. I don't want to be filtered. So my lovely partner here, looked at my manuscript and he said, I can make your dream come true. He's an IT engineer. So he took my manuscript, organized it, put it in lovely pages, and then he done the cover of my book. And then, yes, and supported me, and he said, it's edited, there you go. And then, thank you. So, this is an honest book. There's no sugarcoating. No sugarcoating at all. It just tells you about what happens, how life is unfair. It's all here. And yes, I think that's it. Just want to see, maybe I left something out that's quite important. Yes, and I just will be honored to, I have the copies here, and like I said, identity, silence, resilience, survival, and finding your voice. I would be delighted to meet you afterwards. I am friendly, I know it sounds a bit rough, but you can come over and hear a little of your own story, because every one of us is carrying a story. So and every one of us has the power to embroider their lives, one thread at a time. Thank you so much.